Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Perfect Facades. Dwayne Blackwell had built his life on precision. At 38, he commanded respect in every room he entered. Whether it was the boardroom of his private security firm, the garage where he restored vintage motorcycles, or the pristine suburban home where he'd raised his daughter for 9 years. His steel-gray eyes missed nothing, a trait that had served him well during his time in military intelligence before he'd started Blackwell Securities. Those same eyes now watched his wife Claire Santos Blackwell through the kitchen window as she tended to her garden, her 8-month pregnant belly making her movements careful and deliberate. They'd met 12 years ago when she was a struggling art student and he was fresh out of the service, hungry to build something meaningful. She'd been everything he thought he wanted: beautiful, artistic, seemingly devoted to family. "Dad, can we go see Mom's paintings in the studio?" 9-year-old Emma Blackwell asked, tugging at his sleeve. Emma had inherited his observational skills and Claire's artistic eye, creating an unusually perceptive child who often noticed things adults missed. "Later, sweetheart. Your mother needs rest before the baby comes." Dwayne ruffled his daughter's dark hair, identical to his own. Emma was his pride, sharp, loyal, and unafraid to speak her mind. Claire had been acting strange lately, distant in ways that went beyond pregnancy. Phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered rooms, new friends she'd met at prenatal yoga, but never introduced him to, and an odd defensiveness about her art studio that she'd converted from the guest house 6 months ago. Dwayne's instincts, honed by years of investigating corporate espionage and personal betrayals for his clients, whispered warnings he'd chosen to ignore. The contractions started at 3 a.m. on a rain-soaked Tuesday. Claire's grip on his hand was fierce as they rushed to Mercy General. Emma's staying with his sister Merle Blackwell for the night. Labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 18 hours. During those endless hours in the waiting room, Dwayne found himself studying Claire's face during her brief moments of rest, searching for something he couldn't name. "It's a boy," Dr. Patricia Vance announced as she emerged from the delivery room, exhaustion evident in her voice. "Both mother and baby are healthy. You can see them shortly." Dwayne felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. A son, someone to carry on the Blackwell name, to teach everything he knew about strength, loyalty, and never showing weakness to those who might exploit it. Chapter 2. The Innocent Eye. The next morning, Dwayne picked up Emma from Merle's house. His sister, a stern woman who'd never married and devoted herself to her career as a forensic accountant, studied his face with the same analytical intensity that ran in their family. "You look like hell, Dwayne. When's the last time you slept?" Merle handed him a cup of black coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. "Been at the hospital. Claire had the baby last night, a boy." He should have felt more joy saying those words, but something hollow echoed in his chest. Emma's face lit up with genuine excitement. "Can we go see him?" "And Mom, that's the plan. Get your things." The drive to Mercy General was filled with Emma's chatter about baby names and how she'd teach her little brother to draw. Dwayne found himself only half listening, his mind churning through fragments of suspicion he'd suppressed for months. Claire's sudden interest in ethnic art 6 months ago, the way she'd started working out at a gym across town instead of their usual place, how she'd become protective of her phone, taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. At the hospital, they navigated the maze of corridors to the maternity ward. Room 314 was painted in soft pastels, morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Claire sat propped up in bed, looking radiant despite her exhaustion. In her arms was a bundle wrapped in blue blankets. "Emma, Dwayne, come meet your son." Claire's smile seemed forced, her eyes not quite meeting Dwayne's as they approached. Emma practically bounced on her toes as she looked at the baby. "He's so small. What are we going to name him?" "We'll figure that out," Dwayne said, extending his arms. "Can I hold him?" Claire hesitated for just a moment, but it was enough for Dwayne to notice. When she finally handed over the infant, Dwayne looked down at his supposed son for the first time. The baby had Claire's delicate features, but something was wrong. The skin tone was darker than either of his parents, and the facial structure was distinctly different. Most telling were the eyes. When they opened briefly, they were a deep brown, almost black, nothing like Dwayne's gray or Claire's green. Emma stood on her tiptoes to get a better look, and Dwayne watched his daughter's expression change. Her artistic eye, trained to notice color and proportion, caught what any adult might rationalize away. Her face went pale, and she tugged urgently at Dwayne's sleeve. "Dad, can I talk to you outside? Right now?" Claire's face tightened. "Emma, don't you want to hold your brother?" "In a minute, Mom." Emma's voice was steady, but Dwayne could see the confusion and something like fear in her eyes. They stepped into the hallway, Emma pulling him away from the room until they were out of earshot. "Dad, didn't you notice? That baby is—" Emma struggled for words, then whispered, "That's not your baby. He doesn't look like us at all." Dwayne felt the world tilt. His daughter's innocent observation confirmed what his subconscious had already registered. 9 years old, and Emma had spotted what he'd been too emotionally invested to see immediately. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" "I'm positive. Remember when I drew that family portrait last month? I pay attention to faces, Dad. That baby, he looks like someone else." Dwayne's hands began to shake, not with fear, but with a cold rage that started in his chest and spread through his entire body. In that sterile hospital corridor, watching his daughter's concerned face, something fundamental shifted inside him. The man who'd built his reputation on loyalty, who'd provided for his family without question, who'd trusted completely, felt that trust shatter into razor-sharp fragments. "Go back in there and act normal," he told Emma quietly. "Don't say anything to your mother. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded solemnly. "What are you going to do?" Dwayne pulled out his phone, his military training kicking in to suppress the emotional chaos and focus on necessary action. "I'm going to find out the truth." Chapter 3. The Call. They returned to the room where Claire was adjusting her hospital gown, avoiding eye contact. The baby slept peacefully, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. "He's beautiful," Dwayne said, his voice carefully neutral as he handed the infant back to Claire. "Have you thought about names?" "I was thinking maybe Marcus." Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. "Marcus." Dwayne repeated the name, filing away every detail of Claire's behavior. "That's a strong name." Emma climbed onto the visitor's chair, her face carefully composed despite what she'd just revealed. At 9 years old, she already understood the gravity of adult secrets. "I should call my office, let them know I'll be taking paternity leave," Dwayne said, pulling out his phone. "I'll be right back." He stepped in the hallway and dialed a number he'd memorized years ago, but never thought he'd need to use personally. Blackwell Securities, Stanford Lindsay speaking. Stanford was his head of investigations, a former police detective with 20 years of experience uncovering lies for a living. They'd worked together for 5 years, and Stanford had never failed to deliver truth, no matter how ugly. "Stan, it's Dwayne. I need you to drop everything and start a full investigation." "Boss, I thought you were at the hospital with a new baby. Everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay." Dwayne's voice was ice cold. "I need you to investigate my wife. Full background, recent activities, phone records, financial transactions, everything. And I need it fast." There was a pause. Stanford had been around long enough to know that when Dwayne Blackwell used that tone, someone was about to have their world destroyed. "How fast are we talking?" 24 hours for preliminary findings. "And Stan, this stays between us until I decide otherwise." "Understood. What's the priority focus?" Dwayne looked back toward Claire's room, where he could hear her talking softly to Emma about the baby. "Infidelity. I need to know who, when, where, and how long it's been going on." "I'll start immediately." "Anything else?" "Yeah. Run a genetic marker prediction on the baby if you can get the information. I have reason to believe he's not mine." Another pause. "Jesus, Dwayne. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just give me facts." Dwayne ended the call and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the rage build and then crystallize into something harder and more dangerous: purpose. He'd built his business on the principle that truth always surfaced and betrayal always had consequences. He just never expected to apply those principles to his own family. When he returned to the room, Claire looked up nervously. "Everything okay with work?" "Just arranging time off to be with my family," Dwayne replied, and the word family tasted like ash in his mouth. Over the next hour, he watched Claire interact with the baby and Emma, cataloging every gesture, every word, every micro-expression. His daughter, bless her observant heart, played her part perfectly, cooing over the baby while shooting meaningful glances at her father. A nurse came in to check on Claire and the baby. "Mr. Blackwell, would you like to hold your son while I examine Mom?" "Of course." Dwayne took the infant again, this time studying every feature clinically. The baby's hair was darker and cullier than either parent. The nose was broader, the lips fuller. Even the way the baby's fingers curled was different from Emma's baby pictures. "He's going to be a heartbreaker," the nurse said cheerfully. "Look at those beautiful features." Claire's face went white, and Dwayne saw her hands tremble as she adjusted her blanket. "Yes," Dwayne said quietly, "he certainly has distinctive features." After the nurse left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Emma broke it by announcing she was hungry, which gave Dwayne an excuse to take her to the cafeteria. "Dad, I can tell you're really angry," Emma said as they sat with sandwiches neither of them was eating. "I'm not angry at you, sweetheart. You did the right thing telling me what you noticed." "What happens now?" Dwayne looked at his daughter, his real daughter, the one person in this mess he could trust completely. "Now I find out exactly what's been going on, and then I decide what to do about it. Will you and Mom get divorced?" The question hit him like a physical blow, but he kept his expression calm. "I don't know yet, but I promise you this. Whatever happens, you'll be protected. You'll always be my priority." Emma nodded, then asked with the directness only children possessed, "Are you going to hurt the people who hurt us?" Dwayne set down his sandwich and looked directly into his daughter's eyes that were exactly like his own. "Emma, when someone betrays your trust, when they lie to you and try to make you believe something that isn't true, what do you think should happen to them?" "They should face consequences," Emma said without hesitation. "That's right. They should face consequences." As they returned to Claire's room, Dwayne's phone buzzed with a text from Stanford. "Found something already. Call me when you can." Dwayne felt a cold smile touch his lips. The investigation was just beginning, but he already knew how it would end. Claire had made the mistake of betraying a man who'd built his career on destroying people who thought they could lie and get away with it. She was about to learn that Dwayne Blackwell never forgave, and he never forgot. Chapter 4: Unraveling Threads. Dwayne left Claire and the baby at the hospital under the pretense of getting Emma settled and handling work emergencies. The drive home was silent except for Emma's occasional questions about what would happen next, to which Dwayne gave carefully measured answers. He'd learned long ago that information was power, and even with his daughter, he shared only what she needed to know. Their house, a sprawling ranch-style home in an upscale suburb, felt different now. What had once been a sanctuary now felt like a crime scene waiting to be investigated. Dwayne sent Emma to her room to rest while he headed to his home office, a soundproofed room where he handled sensitive client matters. Stanford answered on the first ring. "Boss, you're not going to like what I found." "Tell me." I started with her phone records since those are easiest to access. Claire's been having regular communication with someone named Jamal Fuller for the past 8 months. Calls, texts, the works. The frequency increased dramatically around the time the baby would have been conceived. Dwayne's grip on the phone tightened. "Tell me about Fuller." 35 years old, African-American, works as a personal trainer at Elite Fitness across town. That's the gym Claire started going to 6 months ago. He's divorced, no kids, clean criminal record. Lives in an apartment complex about 10 minutes from a gym. 8 months, Dwayne repeated. That timing fits. There's more. I pulled security footage from the gym's parking lot for the past month before you called. Claire's been meeting Fuller there 3 times a week, but they're not always going inside. Sometimes they sit in his car for an hour. Sometimes they leave together. Dwayne felt the familiar cold calculation settling over him. Where do they go? Still working on that, but I found something interesting. Fuller has a key to a storage unit across town. Rented it 4 months ago, pays in cash. I'm thinking it might be where they've been meeting. Good work. What else? I'm running a deeper background on Fuller, looking into his finances, his connections, his habits. I should have a full profile by tonight. But Dwayne, Stanford's voice carried a note of concern. What are you planning to do with this information? I'm planning to make sure that the truth comes out and that there are appropriate consequences for everyone involved. That's what I'm afraid of. Look, I know you're hurting, but don't do anything that's going to land you in prison. Dwayne's laugh was devoid of humor. Stanford, I've spent 5 years helping clients destroy people who betrayed them, and I've never left fingerprints. I'm not about to start getting sloppy now. After ending the call, Dwayne sat in his office chair, staring at the wall covered with military commendations and business achievements. Everything he'd built, everything he believed in, had been built on a foundation of lies. But lies could be weaponized just as effectively as truth. Emma appeared in his doorway, holding her favorite stuffed animal. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. If someone lies to you for a long time and you find out, does that mean everything they ever said was a lie? The question hit deeper than she probably intended. Not everything, but it means you can never trust them again. And once trust is broken, it can never be truly repaired. Emma nodded solemnly. I don't think I want to go back to the hospital today. You don't have to. We'll visit your mother tomorrow. That evening, while Emma slept, Dwayne drove to Elite Fitness. The gym was closed, but he sat in his car across the street, studying the building and the surrounding area. His phone rang. Stanford again. I've got more information on Fuller. This guy's got some interesting connections, such as he's got a side business, personal training for wealthy women, if you know what I mean. I found at least 3 other married clients who he's been unusually close to. One of them is Dr. Patricia Vance. Dwayne felt a chill. The doctor who delivered the baby? The same. And get this, Fuller's been making deposits into a separate bank account, large amounts in cash for the past year. My guess is he's been running some kind of operation targeting married women. A predator. More than that, I think he specifically targets women with wealthy husbands. Claire fits the profile perfectly. Dwayne ended the call and continued watching the gym. Plans were forming in his mind, not just for revenge, but for complete destruction. If Fuller was targeting multiple women, then there were multiple husbands who deserved to know the truth. And if Dr. Vance was involved, then there were professional ethics violations that could destroy her career. But first, he needed to confirm paternity. Chapter 5. The Trap Sets. The next morning, Dwayne returned to the hospital with Emma, armed with new information and a carefully constructed plan. He'd spent the night researching DNA testing procedures and making arrangements that would give him leverage over everyone involved in his wife's betrayal. Claire looked nervous when they entered her room. The baby, whom she'd apparently decided to name Marcus without his input, was sleeping in a bassinet beside her bed. How did you sleep? Dwayne asked, kissing her forehead in what appeared to be a loving gesture. Fine. The nurses said we can probably go home tomorrow. That's wonderful. Dwayne pulled out his phone. I've been thinking about the birth announcement. We should take some professional photos, document this moment for our family. Claire's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Maybe we should wait until we're home. I don't look my best right now. You look beautiful. Besides, I already called a photographer. He specializes in newborn portraits, very discreet, comes highly recommended. Dwayne showed her his phone screen, which displayed the contact information for a man who was actually one of his investigators. He'll be here this afternoon. While Claire tried to find reasons to object, Emma played with the baby, her young face a perfect mask of innocence despite knowing the terrible truth. The photographer will need to document the baby's features carefully, Dwayne continued. Apparently, they use high-resolution cameras to capture every detail. It's amazing what modern technology can reveal about family resemblances. Claire went pale. Maybe we should just wait. Claire, this is our son's first day of life being documented. It's important. Dwayne's voice carried just enough insistence to make refusing seem suspicious. Dr. Vance entered the room for a routine check, and Dwayne watched her interaction with Claire carefully. There was a familiarity there that went beyond professional courtesy. Shared glances, a touch that lingered too long on Claire's shoulder. How are we feeling today? Dr. Vance asked. Ready to go home? Claire replied quickly. Well, everything looks good. We'll just need to complete the birth certificate paperwork and run a few final tests. Dr. Vance glanced at Dwayne. Mr. Blackwell, we'll need your signature on several documents. Of course. Actually, Doctor, I have a question about genetic testing. Is it standard procedure to run DNA verification for birth certificates? Dr. Vance's professional smile faltered slightly. That's not typically necessary unless there are specific medical concerns. I'm just thinking about family medical history, hereditary conditions, that sort of thing. I want to make sure we have complete records for Marcus's future healthcare needs. We can discuss that if you'd like, but it's not urgent. Dwayne nodded agreeably, but he noticed how Dr. Vance and Claire exchanged another glance. The doctor left quickly after that, and Claire remained silent for several minutes. Dwayne, she finally said, there's something I need to tell you. Emma looked up from the baby, her eyes wide. Dwayne felt his pulse quicken, but kept his expression neutral. What is it? Claire's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. I haven't been completely honest about everything. About what? For a moment, it seemed like she might confess everything. But then her phone buzzed with a text message, and Dwayne saw her glance at it and make a decision. The pregnancy was harder than I let on. I didn't want you to worry. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Dwayne simply nodded and squeezed her hand. You can tell me anything, Claire. You know that. That afternoon, the photographer arrived. Actually, Julius Suarez, one of Dwayne's most skilled investigators. He carried professional camera equipment and charmed Claire with talk about capturing the perfect family moment. I'll need several shots of the baby alone, Julius explained, setting up his equipment. Close-ups that capture all his unique features. Parents are always amazed at how much detail these high-resolution images show. As Julius worked, taking dozens of photos from every angle, Dwayne noticed Claire becoming increasingly agitated. When Julius asked for family shots, placing Dwayne next to the baby, Claire interrupted. Maybe we should do this later. Marcus seems fussy. He looks perfectly content to me, Dwayne replied. Let's get these done now. The session lasted an hour, with Julius capturing every detail that would later be analyzed by experts. Before leaving, he handed Dwayne a card. I'll have the proofs ready by tomorrow. These are going to be beautiful family portraits. After Julius left, Dwayne excused himself to make phone calls. In the hallway, he dialed Stanford. How's our investigation progressing? I've got everything you need. Fuller's been playing this game for over 2 years. I've identified 5 other women he's been involved with, all married to wealthy men. Dr. Vance has been covering for him, falsifying medical records, helping establish false paternity. It's a whole operation. Evidence, photos, financial records, communications. I've also been monitoring Fuller's movements. He's planning to meet Claire tonight. Tonight? She's still in the hospital. He's coming here. I followed him to the parking garage 20 minutes ago. He's been sitting in his car, waiting. Dwayne felt a cold smile spread across his face. Perfect. Time to accelerate our timeline. Chapter 6, Convergence. Dwayne returned to Claire's room to find her checking her phone nervously. Emma was napping in the visitor's chair, exhausted by the emotional weight she'd been carrying. I need to run home and get some things for tomorrow, Dwayne announced. Will you be okay here with Emma? Actually, Claire said quickly, maybe you should take Emma home. She looks tired, and I could use some rest. Are you sure? I don't like leaving you alone. I'll be fine. The nurses check on me every hour. Dwayne pretended to consider this. Okay, but I'll be back later tonight to check on you. He gently woke Emma and helped her gather her things. As they prepared to leave, he kissed Claire goodbye, noting how she avoided eye contact. Rest well. I'll see you tonight. In the parking garage, Dwayne spotted Fuller's car immediately, a black Mustang parked in a corner spot with tinted windows. He drove Emma home and called his sister Merle to come stay with her. I need you to keep Emma tonight, he told Merle when she arrived. There's something I need to handle. Merle studied his face with her sharp accountant's eye. This is about Claire, isn't it? Yes. What did she do? What do you think she did? Merle's expression hardened. That foolish girl. She has no idea who she's dealing with, does she? No, she doesn't. But she's about to learn. Dwayne returned to the hospital around 9 p.m., but instead of going to Claire's room, he positioned himself in the parking garage with a clear view of Fuller's car. He didn't have to wait long. At 9:30, he watched Claire emerge from the hospital's side entrance, the same exit used by staff to avoid the main lobby. She was still in her hospital gown, but had thrown a coat over it. She moved carefully, obviously still recovering from childbirth, but her destination was clear. She reached Fuller's car and got into the passenger seat. Dwayne started his engine and followed at a distance as they drove to a 24-hour diner across town. Through the window, he watched them sit in a corner booth, their conversation intense and clearly emotional. Claire was crying. Fuller was holding her hands across the table. Dwayne called Stanford. "Are you recording this?" "Every word. I've got directional microphones and cameras set up. They're discussing what to do now that you're suspicious. And Fuller wants her to leave you. Take the baby and disappear with him. But Claire's afraid. She knows you too well. She's telling him about your military background, your business, how you destroy people for a living." Smart woman. What's Fuller's response? He's telling her it doesn't matter, that you can't touch them if they disappear. He's got it all planned out. New identities, a place to go. Apparently, he's done this before. Dwayne felt his anger crystallize into something harder and more focused. "Give me everything you have on his previous disappearances. I want to know every detail of his operation." "Already on it. Boss, they're planning to leave tomorrow night. Claire's going to fake a postpartum emergency, get discharged early, and meet him." "Perfect. That gives us 24 hours to prepare a welcome committee." Dwayne watched as Fuller and Claire said their goodbyes in the diner parking lot. The kiss they shared was long and desperate, the embrace of two people who thought they were about to escape consequences. They had no idea that Dwayne Blackwell had never let anyone escape consequences in his life, and he wasn't about to start now. As he followed Claire back to the hospital, Dwayne's phone rang. It was Julius with the photo analysis results. "No question about it, boss. That baby isn't yours. Facial structure, skin tone, hair texture. Everything points to Fuller being the father. I've got comparison photos that make it undeniable." "Good. Add those to the evidence file." Dwayne watched Claire slip back into the hospital, probably thinking she'd been clever. She had no idea that her husband had just watched her seal her own fate. Tomorrow would be a very interesting day. Chapter 7. The Web Titans. Dawn broke gray and cold as Dwayne sat in his office, surrounded by the fruits of Stanford's investigation. Photos, financial records, phone logs, and surveillance footage covered every surface. The evidence painted a clear picture of betrayal that went deeper than simple adultery. Jamal Fuller wasn't just a predator. He was a professional con artist who specialized in targeting wealthy married women. Over the past 3 years, he'd seduced 5 women, gotten 2 of them pregnant, and then blackmailed their husbands for silence money before disappearing with his victims. Dr. Patricia Vance had been providing medical cover, falsifying records and paternity information in exchange for a cut of the profits. Claire had been their latest mark, but they'd made a critical error in targeting Dwayne Blackwell. "Everything's in place," Stanford reported via phone. "Fuller thinks he's meeting Claire tonight at the storage unit to collect their escape fund and finalize plans. He has no idea we've been monitoring their communications." "And Dr. Vance?" "She's scheduled for a meeting with the hospital's ethics board tomorrow morning. Seems someone submitted an anonymous complaint about falsified medical records, with substantial evidence attached." Dwayne smiled coldly. "Excellent. What about the other families? I've prepared information packets for all of Fuller's previous victims' husbands. They'll receive them this afternoon, photos, evidence, everything they need to understand what happened to their families." "Good. Make sure each packet includes Fuller's current location and tonight's meeting details." Emma appeared in his office doorway, still in her pajamas. "Dad, what are you doing?" Dwayne quickly covered the most damaging photos. "Just work, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Not really. I keep thinking about Mom and the baby." Emma climbed into the chair across from his desk. "Are you going to forgive her?" The question hung in the air between them. Dwayne studied his daughter's face. So young, but already learning that the world was full of people who would lie and betray those who trusted them. "Emma, What would you do if someone stole something precious from you, then lied about it for months? I want them to give it back and say they were sorry. But what if they couldn't give it back? What if the thing they stole was time and trust and the feeling of being safe in your own family? Emma considered this seriously. Then I guess I'd want them to face consequences. That's right. And sometimes consequences are the only way people learn not to hurt others. Merle arrived at noon to watch Emma while Dwayne handled business. His sister's farewell was characteristically blunt. Do what needs to be done, but don't leave evidence. At the hospital, Dwayne found Claire packing her things. The baby slept in his carrier, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Ready to go home, Dwayne asked cheerfully. Yes, I can't wait to get out of here. Claire's nervousness was palpable. I've arranged for a car service to take you home. I have some urgent business to handle this afternoon, but I'll be back for dinner. Relief flashed across Claire's face. That's fine. I'll probably rest anyway. Dwayne helped load their things, noting how Claire kept checking her phone. When they reached the house, he made a show of settling her and the baby in their bedroom before announcing he had to leave. Take care of yourself, he said, kissing her forehead. I'll see you tonight. As soon as he left, Dwayne circled back and parked where he could watch the house. Within an hour, a taxi arrived. Claire emerged with a small bag and the baby, moving quickly despite her recent surgery. She was heading to the storage unit where Fuller waited, thinking they were about to start their new life together. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been months in the making. Chapter 8. The Hunters Become the Hunted. The storage facility was on the industrial side of town, a sprawling complex of metal buildings and narrow alleys that provided perfect cover for surveillance. Dwayne arrived first, positioning himself with a clear view of Unit 247 where Fuller had been meeting his victims. Stanford's voice crackled through his earpiece. Fuller's inside, waiting. I count 3 cars approaching from different directions. Looks like those other husbands got our message. Through his binoculars, Dwayne watched as a taxi pulled up to the storage unit. Claire got out, carrying the baby in a small bag. She looked around nervously before knocking on the metal door. Fuller opened it immediately, pulling her inside. Dwayne could see them through the partially opened door, embracing, talking rapidly, making final preparations for their escape. Phase 2, Dwayne said into his microphone. 3 cars converged on the storage facility. From the first emerged Marcus Cervantes, an oil executive whose wife had been Fuller's victim 8 months ago. From the second came Fritz Charles, a federal prosecutor whose marriage had imploded after Fuller's manipulation. The third car held Elliot Garrison, a former Marine whose wife had killed herself after Fuller abandoned her. These men had received Dwayne's evidence packets that afternoon. They'd learned the truth about their destroyed families, and they'd come for justice. Gentlemen, Dwayne said as they gathered around his position, the people who destroyed your families are in that unit, planning their next escape. Marcus Cervantes' face was carved from stone. My wife died in a car accident after Fuller left her. She was trying to drive to see him when she crashed. My kids lost their mother because of that bastard. For Charles cracked his knuckles. Fuller cost me my marriage, my kids' respect, and nearly my career. I want 5 minutes alone with him. Elliot Garrison said nothing, but his hands were steady and his eyes were cold. The look of a man who'd killed enemies of his country and wouldn't hesitate to kill enemies of his family. There's a back entrance, Dwayne explained. Stanford's been monitoring their communications. They're planning to leave in 30 minutes. Once they come out, they're going to find that their car won't start. Stanford made sure of that. When they're stranded and panicked, that's when we move. What about the baby? Marcus asked. The baby's innocent in this. We protect him at all costs. But Fuller and my wife. Dwayne's voice trailed off. They've made their choices. 28 minutes later, Fuller and Claire emerged from the storage unit. Claire carried the baby while Fuller loaded bags into his car. When he turned the key, nothing happened. Dwayne watched through his binoculars as Fuller tried the engine repeatedly, growing more agitated. Claire stood beside the car, bouncing the baby and looking around nervously. Now, Dwayne said. The 4 men emerged from the shadows simultaneously, surrounding Fuller's car. Claire screamed when she saw them, clutching the baby tighter. Hello, Jamal, Dwayne said pleasantly. I think it's time we had a conversation. Fuller's face went through several emotions: confusion, recognition, fear. I don't know what you're talking about, man. You're just escaping with my wife and the child you fathered while lying to my family for 8 months, Dwayne interrupted. Along with the money you've stolen from these other gentlemen's families. Claire looked between the men, finally understanding the scope of what was happening. Dwayne, please, I can explain. No explanations needed, Claire. We've been watching you for days. We know everything. Fritz Charles stepped forward, his prosecutor's voice carrying legal authority. Jamal Fuller, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. And Dr. Patricia Vance is being arrested at this very moment for falsifying medical records. Fuller tried to run, but Elliot Garrison moved with military precision, taking him down in seconds. You cost good people their families, Elliot said quietly. Now you're going to pay for it. Chapter 9. Justice Served Cold. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town had been Dwayne's backup location for sensitive client meetings. Soundproof, isolated, and completely off any official records. Now it served as a courtroom where real justice would be dispensed. Fuller sat zip-tied to a metal chair, his face swollen from Elliot's takedown. Claire sat nearby, holding the baby, her eyes wide with terror as she finally understood who her husband really was. Gentlemen, Dwayne addressed the other 3 husbands, we're here because the legal system failed us. Fuller would have gotten a few years in minimum security, and my wife would have gotten half my assets in divorce court. That's not justice. That's just bureaucracy. Marcus Cervantes paced like a caged animal. My wife died because of this bastard. My kids ask me every day why mommy had to go away. What am I supposed to tell them? You tell them, Dwayne replied, that the man who hurt their mother faced real consequences. Stanford had provided detailed financial records showing Fuller's operation. Over 3 years, he destroyed 7 families, stolen over $2 million in blackmail and settlements, and left a trail of broken homes and traumatized children. Claire, Dwayne said, turning to his wife, you've been very quiet. Don't you have anything to say? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. I never meant for this to happen. Jamal said he loved me, that we could have a life together. Shut up, Fuller snapped. Just shut up and don't say anything else. Dwayne smiled coldly. Actually, Jamal, I think Claire should tell us everything. How you approached her at the gym, how you made her feel special, how you convinced her to betray her family. I think these gentlemen would find it educational. Over the next hour, the full scope of Fuller's manipulation became clear. He'd targeted Claire specifically after researching Dwayne's business and wealth. The seduction had been calculated, designed to create maximum emotional dependence before revealing his true nature. The beautiful part, Fuller had bragged to Claire during one of their recorded conversations, is that by the time they figure out, we're gone and they're left dealing with the mess. But Fuller had miscalculated. He'd never encountered a man like Dwayne Blackwell. Here's what's going to happen, Dwayne announced. Fuller, you're going to sign a full confession detailing your operation, naming Dr. Vance as your accomplice, and providing bank account information for all the money you've stolen. That money is going to be returned to the families you've destroyed. And if I refuse? Dwayne nodded to Elliot, who had been maintaining his military bearing throughout the proceedings. Elliot here served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He's an expert in interrogation techniques that leave no permanent marks. How long do you think you'll last before you're begging to sign? Fuller's bravado crumbled. What about witness protection? I've got information on other operations. No deals, Fritz Charles interrupted. You're going to prison for a very long time, and we're going to make sure every inmate knows exactly what you did to families like theirs. As Fuller signed his confession, Dwayne turned to Claire. And you, my dear wife, what do you think your consequences should be? Claire was crying now, clutching the baby. Dwayne, please, I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? Dwayne's voice was deadly quiet. You destroyed our marriage, lied to my daughter, and tried to pass another man's child off as mine. Those aren't mistakes. Those are calculated betrayals. I'll do anything to make this right. There is no making this right, Claire. There's only consequences. Dwayne pulled out a legal document Stanford had prepared, Divorce papers. You're going to sign them, relinquishing all claims to marital assets, agreeing to supervise visitation with Emma only, and acknowledging that the child you're holding is not mine and therefore not entitled to any support from me. I'll have nothing. You'll have what you deserve, Marcus Cervantes said harshly, which is exactly nothing. Claire signed with shaking hands, her dreams of escape and new love crumbling around her. As dawn broke over the warehouse, Stanford arrived with 2 federal marshals, friends from his police days who specialized in making certain types of problems disappear permanently. Jamal Fuller, one of them, announced, "You're under arrest for interstate fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. The FBI has been very interested in your operation." As they led Fuller away, he looked back at Claire with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Blackwell." Dwayne's smile was colder than winter. "Yes, it is." 6 months later, Dwayne sat at his office reviewing the final reports on the Fuller case. Dr. Vance had lost her medical license and received a 5-year sentence for falsifying records. Fuller had been convicted on 17 counts and would spend the next 25 years in federal prison. The money he'd stolen had been recovered and returned to his victims. Emma knocked on his office door, now 10 years old and remarkably resilient after months of counseling and honest conversations about adult failures and consequences. "Dad, I finished my homework. Can we work on the motorcycle now?" "Absolutely." They'd been restoring a 1967 Harley together, a project that gave them time to talk through everything that had happened. Emma had handled the truth better than most adults would have. But then again, she was a Blackwell. "Dad," Emma said as they worked on the engine, "do you ever miss Mom?" Dwayne considered the question carefully. "I miss the person I thought she was. But that person never really existed. Will you ever get married again?" "Maybe someday. But whoever I marry will have to understand that you and I are a team, and nothing comes between family loyalty." Emma smiled. "I like that." Claire had moved across the country with her baby, supported by a small allowance that would end when the child turned 18. She'd sent letters asking for forgiveness, for second chances, for understanding. Dwayne had returned them all unopened. Some betrayals were unforgivable. Some consequences were permanent. And Dwayne Blackwell had never been a man who believed in second chances for those who crossed him. The motorcycle engine roared to life, and Emma cheered with delight. They had a good life together, built on truth, loyalty, and the understanding that strength came from never tolerating betrayal. It was a lesson Emma would carry with her for the rest of her life. And in the end, that was the most important legacy Dwayne could leave his daughter. The knowledge that loyalty was rewarded, betrayal was punished, and justice, while sometimes delayed, was never denied. The Blackwell name meant something. It always would. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Hello, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Glass. The day Victor Reeves proposed to Melanie Porter was the crowning achievement of his life. Not the millions he'd made transforming a failing construction company into Boston's premier real estate developer. Not the sprawling lakeside mansion in Sudbury that graced architectural magazines. Those were merely steps to winning her, the brilliant art curator whose smile lit up every charity gala in New England. Now, 15 years later, Victor stood at his office window, watching snow blanket the city. At 45, his dark hair showing distinguished silver at the temples, he remained as formidable as when he'd clawed his way up from nothing. The son of a janitor, Victor had learned early that the world belonged to those who seized it without remorse. "Mr. Reeves?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 2 o'clock is here. Send him in, Denise." Mitchell Bennett entered with the cautious tread of someone delivering bad news. Victor had hired the private investigator 3 months ago, not out of suspicion, but opportunity. A business rival, Lawrence Kessler, had been making aggressive moves against Victor's company. Victor simply wanted ammunition. "You asked me to monitor Kessler's activities," Mitchell began, "but I found something else." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "It's about Mrs. Reeves." The air in the room seemed to thin. Victor's face remained impassive, but his fingers tightened imperceptibly on his desk. "She's been meeting someone. Regularly. A man named Alexander Dunleavy." "The artist?" Victor asked, his voice betraying nothing. "Yes, sir. They've been intimate." Victor nodded once. "Show me." Mitchell handed over an envelope. The photographs inside told an unmistakable story. Melanie and Alexander in various stages of embrace. Hotel receipts, text messages, a timeline extending back nearly 7 months. "Continue your surveillance," Victor said calmly. "I want everything. Where they meet, what they discuss, their plans." "Sir, there's more." Mitchell hesitated. "They've discussed leaving. Together. And there's mention of taking certain assets with them." Victor's expression didn't change, but something cold and terrible settled in his eyes. "Thank you, Mitchell. That will be all." After the investigator left, Victor remained motionless, staring at the evidence of his wife's betrayal. Melanie, who had access to all their accounts. Melanie, who knew every detail of his business dealings, his vulnerabilities, his secrets. His phone rang. His daughter Natalie, a senior at Wellesley College. Her vibrant personality always reminded him of Melanie when they'd first met. "Hey, sweetheart. Dad, are we still on for dinner Thursday? I need fashion advice for this interview." "Always," he replied, his voice warm despite the cold calculation already forming in his mind. After hanging up, Victor opened his safe and removed a leather journal, one he hadn't touched in years. Inside were contingency plans for every possible disaster, business failures, political scandals, even kidnapping attempts. He'd never written one for this. It was time to start. He wouldn't merely survive this betrayal. Victor Reeves never just survived. Those who crossed him learned one immutable truth. He didn't fight to win. He fought to ensure his enemies never recovered. Victor looked at the calendar. 3 weeks until their anniversary dinner, the grand celebration Melanie had been planning for months. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly. Perfect timing. Chapter 2. Deception's Architecture. Melanie Reeves moved through their home with the grace of someone accustomed to beauty. At 42, she remained stunning, her auburn hair cut in an elegant bob, her figure toned from relentless yoga sessions. She was arranging flowers in the foyer when Victor arrived home. "You're early," she said, offering her cheek for a kiss. Victor obliged. "Thought I'd help with dinner. Natalie's coming, right? And bringing that new boyfriend." Melanie smiled. "I've already warned her I'll be interrogating him thoroughly." Victor watched her closely. The ease of her lie was remarkable. How she could discuss family dinner while planning to abandon them. In his pocket, he fingered the small recording device he'd planted in her car that morning. Their younger child, Connor, thundered down the stairs, baseball gear in tow. At 16, he was already taller than Victor, all gangly limbs and perpetual hunger. "Dad, can we hit some balls before dinner?" "Let me change first," Victor replied, ruffling his son's hair. As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, Victor mentally reviewed what he'd learned. Alexander Dunleavy had appeared in their lives 3 years ago when Melanie curated an exhibition featuring his work. The artist's rise had been meteoric since then, fueled, Victor now understood, by Melanie's connections and possibly Victor's own unwitting financial support. In their bedroom, Victor accessed the hidden panel behind their closet, where he kept his most sensitive documents. Among them was a red folder labeled Contingencies. He added new notes about Melanie's schedule, her passwords, her recent purchases. His phone buzzed with a text from Mitchell. D-Planning Gallery opening in NYC next month. Tickets purchased for 2. Victor smiled grimly. So they had a departure date. At dinner, Natalie charmed everyone with stories from college while her boyfriend Blake answered Victor's probing questions about his finance internship. Victor played the role of engaged father perfectly while recording every interaction with Melanie for later analysis. "By the way," he mentioned casually over dessert, "I need to update our wills." That meeting with Pearson's client last week, the one who died intestate, it got me thinking. Melanie looked up. Oh, sure. Whatever you think is best. I'll set it up for next week, Victor replied, noting how she failed to ask any questions. The old Melanie would have had concerns, suggestions. Later that night, with Melanie asleep beside him, Victor slipped away to his home office and connected to the cameras he'd installed throughout the house. He reviewed footage of Melanie on her laptop earlier that day, using magnification software to catch her password as she typed. By 3 a.m., he had access to her private email account. The messages between her and Alexander were explicit, not just in their romance, but in their plans. Victor suspects nothing she'd written last week. Once we're gone, it will be too late for him to stop the transfers. Victor's jaw tightened as he read further. Alexander and Melanie weren't just planning to leave. They were systematically preparing to destroy him. Alexander had connections to Lawrence Kessler, his business rival. They planned to take everything: money, proprietary business information, even custody of Connor. Most men would have confronted her immediately. Most men would have acted from hurt. Victor was not most men. He closed the laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the property he'd built for a family that was now fracturing. But unlike his father, who'd collapsed under the weight of betrayal when Victor's mother left, Victor would emerge stronger. He turned back to his desk and began drawing up plans. Melanie thought she knew him. She was wrong. She knew only what he had allowed her to see. The real Victor Reeves was about to introduce himself. Chapter 3: The Precipice. The anniversary party preparations accelerated over the next 2 weeks. Melanie threw herself into the details. A lavish celebration at the Hawthorne Hotel where they'd held their wedding reception. 200 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, custom-made ice sculptures. Victor approved every expense with apparent enthusiasm. Spare nothing, he told her, watching her eyes light up. 15 years deserves commemoration. Meanwhile, he methodically executed the first phase of his plan. He transferred funds to accounts Melanie couldn't access. He met privately with his lawyers to modify their prenuptial agreement based on infidelity concerns he claimed to have drafted years ago but never filed, backdating documents with the help of a notary who owed him several favors. He installed specialized software on Melanie's devices, capturing every communication with Alexander. Their plans grew clearer. Melanie would withdraw $5 million after the anniversary party, claiming it was for a surprise art acquisition. By the time Victor discovered the theft, they would be beyond reach in a country with limited extradition. On Tuesday, Victor visited Connor's school for a parent-teacher conference, using the opportunity to plant seeds of doubt about Melanie's commitment to their son's future. "Your mother seems distracted lately," he mentioned casually as they drove home. "Have you noticed?" Connor shrugged. "She's busy with the gallery stuff, I guess." "I worry sometimes," Victor continued, "about her priorities." That evening, as snow fell again, Victor received a call from Mitchell. "Sir, I've confirmed Dunleavy's connection to Kessler. They've met 3 times in the past month. I've got recordings. Send them to my secure server," Victor instructed. "And Mitchell, I need you to deliver an envelope to Detective Warren Cox. He'll know what it means." The detective had been in Victor's pocket for years, useful for making problems disappear. The envelope contained evidence of Alexander's tax fraud, carefully manufactured by Victor's financial team, but convincing enough to warrant investigation. Friday brought Natalie home for the weekend. Victor took her to lunch at her favorite bistro. "How are things with you and Mom?" she asked, surprising him with her perceptiveness. "You seem different with each other." Victor chose his words carefully. "Your mother has been preoccupied with her career lately. It's natural at certain points in a marriage." "She missed my presentation last month," Natalie said quietly. "She promised to come." Victor covered his daughter's hand with his own. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You know I would have been there if I could." "I know, Dad." She smiled. "You always show up." The seed planted itself perfectly. No accusations against Melanie, just contrast. Victor as the reliable parent, Melanie as increasingly absent. That night, Victor finalized the most crucial element of his plan. He contacted a security specialist he'd used for his corporate offices. I need a comprehensive system installed. Immediately and discreetly. The usual parameters, Mr. Reeves? No, Victor replied. Something different this time. Something theatrical. The night before the anniversary party, Victor stood in his study reviewing everything. The stage was set. All players were in position. Melanie's betrayal would not just be revealed. It would be enshrined in memory. His phone rang. It was Alexander Dunleavy. Victor smiled and answered. Mr. Dunleavy, to what do I owe the pleasure? I think we should meet, Alexander said, his voice tense. About your wife. Indeed. Victor's tone remained pleasant. What an interesting suggestion. Tomorrow night, perhaps? I'm hosting a little gathering you might find illuminating. This isn't a game, Reeves. On that, Victor said, we are in complete agreement. After hanging up, Victor poured himself a whiskey and raised it toward the photograph of his father on the wall. The man who'd taught him that weakness was unforgivable. Watch and learn, old man, he murmured. Watch and learn. Chapter 4. Clockwork Vengeance. The morning of the anniversary celebration dawned bright and cold. Victor woke early, watching Melanie sleep beside him. For 15 years, he believed her to be the exception to his rule of trusting no one. That miscalculation would not go unpunished. Over breakfast, he presented her with a small box. A preview, he said, as Connor watched eagerly from across the table. Melanie opened it to find a platinum bracelet studded with diamonds. It's beautiful, she whispered, guilt flashing briefly across her features. Victor clasped it around her wrist. I had it engraved. She turned it to read the inscription. Truth will out. Shakespeare, she asked, her smile faltering slightly. The Merchant of Venice, Victor confirmed. One of my favorites. He left for the office while Melanie finalized party details. At precisely 10 a.m., he received confirmation that Alexander had been contacted by Detective Cox regarding financial irregularities. By noon, the detective reported that Alexander appeared significantly distressed. Perfect. Victor's next meeting was with Boyd Whitaker, Melanie's brother. The man had struggled with gambling debts for years, and Victor had quietly bailed him out multiple times, a fact kept from Melanie at Boyd's insistence. I need a favor, Victor told him over lunch. Anything, Boyd replied instantly. You know that. Tonight at the party. I need you to deliver something to Melanie at exactly 9:30. Boyd looked confused but nodded. Sure. What is it? Victor handed him a sealed envelope. A surprise. Part of our anniversary celebration. His next call was to Natalie, confirming she would bring the family albums he'd requested for the anniversary video. And make sure to include those photos from Martha's Vineyard last summer. Photos that Victor had carefully edited to include shadow figures in windows, suggesting surveillance long before Melanie realized. By 4 p.m., Victor returned home to dress for the evening. Melanie was already gone, overseeing final preparations at the hotel. He used the opportunity to activate the security protocols installed throughout their house and check that his home office was prepared for what would follow. Detective Cox called again. Dunleavy's rattled. He tried to access his offshore account, the one you flagged for us. He's making mistakes. Excellent, Victor replied. Maintain pressure, but keep him functional. I need him coherent tonight. The final piece fell into place when Mitchell texted. Package delivered to hotel suite as requested. At 7 p.m., Victor arrived at the Hawthorne. Guests were already filling the ballroom. Colleagues, friends, family members, all unwitting participants in the evening's true purpose. Melanie glided through the crowd in a burgundy gown that Victor had specifically requested she wear, a dress that matched, not coincidentally, the shade of carpet in the hotel suite he'd reserved upstairs. You look stunning, he told her, kissing her cheek. A vision. Thank you. She smiled, searching his face. Are you all right? You seem excited, he supplied. It's not every day we celebrate 15 years. The evening progressed with speeches, dinner, dancing. Victor played the devoted husband flawlessly, his hand never leaving Melanie's waist during their first dance. At their table, he raised a toast that brought tears to guests' eyes. To my beautiful wife, who has given me everything a man could desire, he said, looking directly into her eyes. To the life we've built together. May its foundation never crumble. At 9:15, Victor excused himself briefly, sending a text to Alexander. I know everything. Suite 1540. Now, at 9:25, he noticed Melanie check her phone, her face paling slightly before she excused herself. At 9:30, Boyd approached Victor. I gave her the envelope when she was heading for the elevator. What was in it? A room key, Victor replied calmly. She's meeting someone. Boyd's confusion turned to shock. What are you talking about? Your sister has been planning to leave me, Victor said, his voice level. Tonight's her last hurrah before disappearing with her lover and millions of my money. That's impossible, Boyd protested. Melanie wouldn't. Follow me if you want proof, Victor interrupted, already walking toward the elevators. They rode in silence to the 15th floor, Boyd shifting uncomfortably beside him. Victor checked his watch, 9:40 exactly. Outside suite 1540, Victor paused. What you're about to see may be disturbing, he warned, but necessary. He inserted his key card and opened the door. The suite's entryway was dark, but voices came from the bedroom. Victor motioned for Boyd to remain silent as they approached. Through the partially open door, they could see Melanie and Alexander in heated conversation. He knows something, Alexander was saying frantically. Cox showed up at my studio today, asking about offshore accounts. That's impossible, Melanie insisted. Victor trusts me completely. The transfer is still on for tomorrow. And what about Kessler? If Victor discovers our connection, he won't, Melanie snapped. I've been careful. Once we're gone, it won't matter anyway. He'll be ruined before he can track us down. Victor pushed the door fully open, flooding the room with light. Melanie whirled around, her face transforming from shock to calculation in seconds. Victor, she began, this isn't what looks like, he finished, his voice terrifyingly calm. I believe it's exactly what it looks like, Melanie. You and Mr. Dunleavy planning your escape while simultaneously orchestrating my destruction. Alexander stepped forward. Listen, Reeves, I'm not interested in anything you have to say, Victor cut him off. Except perhaps an explanation of your recent conversations with Lawrence Kessler regarding my company's proprietary development plans. The artist blanched. Boyd pushed past Victor. Mel, tell me this isn't true. Melanie's expression hardened. You don't understand, Boyd. Victor has everything. He's always had everything. I deserve my share. Your share, Victor repeated softly. Interesting choice of words for theft, conspiracy, and corporate espionage. He removed his phone and pressed a button. Instantly, the room's hidden speakers activated, playing recordings of Melanie and Alexander discussing their plans in explicit detail. You've been monitoring me? Melanie asked, outrage replacing shock. No, Victor corrected. I've been building a case. He turned to Boyd. Your sister isn't just leaving me. She's been selling information to my competitors, planning to empty our accounts, even arranged to frame me for tax fraud to prevent me from pursuing her. Boyd stared at his sister in disbelief. Mel, how could you? Oh, please, she spat. Victor's no saint. Do you know what he did to get where he is? The people he stepped on? The difference, Victor replied evenly, is that I never betrayed family. He pressed another button on his phone. The bedroom door swung fully open to reveal Detective Cox, standing there with two uniformed officers. Mr. Dunleavy, Cox said formally, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, corporate espionage, and attempted grand larceny. As the officers handcuffed a protesting Alexander, Victor turned to Melanie. You won't be arrested tonight, he told her. That would disrupt our anniversary party. But when you return home, you'll find your access to our accounts revoked, your studio locked, your belongings packed. You can't do this, she hissed. I already have, Victor replied. The prenuptial agreement you signed included an infidelity clause with specific penalties, all documented and witnessed years ago. Her eyes widened. That's not possible. I would have remembered. Would you? Victor stepped closer. Or did you simply sign what your loving husband placed before you? The realization dawned on her face. You forged documents. Prove it, he challenged softly. As Alexander was led away, Victor addressed the detective. When you search Mr. Dunleavy's studio, you'll find the evidence we discussed. Cox nodded. We'll be thorough, sir. Victor turned back to Melanie, whose face had transformed from defiance to calculation. You're forgetting our children, she said. They'll never forgive you for this. Victor smiled thinly. We'll see about that. He checked his watch. We should return to our guests. We have an anniversary video to present in 20 minutes. As they left, Boyd remained behind, staring at his sister with newfound understanding. You picked the wrong man to betray Mel. Her laughter followed them out. You have no idea what you've started, Victor. No, he replied calmly as the elevator doors closed. But I know exactly how it ends. Chapter 5, The Illusionist's Gambit. The remainder of the anniversary party unfolded like a masterful theatrical production. Victor guided Melanie back to their table, his hand firmly around her waist. To guests, a loving gesture. To Melanie, an unspoken warning. Smile, dear, he murmured. Your mascara's running. The anniversary video began playing on large screens throughout the ballroom. A chronological journey through their marriage. Childhood photos of both. Their wedding day. The births of Natalie and Connor. Family vacations. And then, subtle irregularities appeared. Photos of Melanie with Alexander at gallery openings. Victor's enhanced versions highlighting their closeness. Footage of Melanie entering hotels on days she'd claimed to be elsewhere. All presented with a narration that seemed innocent but carried double meanings. Melanie has always pursued her passions with single-minded determination. Victor's pre-recorded voice intoned over footage of her leaving Alexander's studio. Her commitment to the arts has taken her to unexpected places. Melanie's fingers gripped her champagne glass with white-knuckled tension. Guests remained oblivious, seeing only a touching tribute, while she witnessed the systematic dismantling of her deception. After the video, Victor rose to make a final toast. Many of you have asked the secret to 15 years of marriage, he began, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Melanie. The answer is simple, complete transparency. Melanie and I have no secrets from each other. Isn't that right, darling? She lifted her glass mechanically. None whatsoever. Later, as guests began departing, Natalie approached her parents. That was beautiful, Dad, she said, hugging him before turning to Melanie. Mom, are you feeling okay? You look pale. Just tired, sweetheart, Melanie replied. Victor smoothly interceded. Your mother's had a long day preparing everything. Perhaps you could drive her home? I need to stay and handle a few last details. Once they left, Victor summoned Mitchell to his side. Status. Dunleavy's being processed downtown, the investigator reported. The search warrant is being executed at his studio now, and the locks at your house have been changed as requested. Excellent. What about our secondary target? Kessler's received the documents. He's reviewing them tonight. Victor nodded. Stay with him. I want to know the moment he realizes his position. The drive home that night was silent. Victor had arranged for Natalie to take Melanie home and stay with her, ensuring no immediate confrontation. This gave him time to implement the next phase. At midnight, he arrived at their Sudbury mansion to find Melanie waiting in the foyer alone. Where's Natalie? He asked. Asleep, Melanie replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. I didn't want to involve her in whatever scene you're planning. No scene, Victor said, removing his coat. Just consequences. You've obviously been planning this for some time, she observed. Very thorough. Unlike you, he countered. You left digital footprints everywhere. Amateur mistakes. Her jaw tightened. What happens now? Now you leave. Tonight. Take personal items only. He handed her an envelope. Inside you'll find divorce papers already filed with the court, a cashier's check for $50,000, and a one-way ticket to Chicago departing tomorrow morning. Chicago? There's nothing for me in Chicago. Precisely, Victor replied. You'll establish residence there for the divorce proceedings. The address is arranged. You'll receive a monthly stipend, generous by most standards, though certainly not what you'd hope to steal. And if I fight this, then instead of fraud charges against Alexander, they become conspiracy charges against both of you. Instead of a quiet divorce, it becomes a public scandal. Instead of $50,000, you get nothing. Melanie studied him, recognition dawning. You're enjoying this. I'm simply conducting business, he corrected. Calculating returns on a failed investment. What about Connor? Natalie? They remain with me, Victor stated flatly. You'll have supervised visitation after the divorce is finalized. Any attempt to contact them outside those parameters will result in immediate termination of your stipend. You can't keep me from my children, she protested. Actually, I can. Victor removed another document from his pocket. Sworn affidavits from 3 of Connor's teachers regarding your absence from school functions. Records showing you missed Natalie's presentation while meeting Alexander. Credit card statements placing you at hotels during family emergencies. That's manipulation, not evidence. It's pattern establishment, he corrected, and quite effective in family court. Melanie's composure finally cracked. They'll hate you when they learn the truth. What truth would that be? Victor asked mildly. That their mother chose an affair over their welfare? That she conspired with my business rival? That she planned to disappear with millions, leaving them behind? You ruthless bastard, she whispered. Yes, he agreed simply. I am. A fact you seem to have forgotten. He checked his watch. You have until 6 a.m. to pack and leave. A car will be waiting. As he turned to go, she called after him. You think you've won, but you haven't. Alexander and I. Alexander, Victor interrupted, has already accepted a plea deal. In exchange for reduced charges, he's providing evidence against Lawrence Kessler. Your lover values his freedom more than your partnership, it seems. This was a calculated lie. The plea deal was still being negotiated, but the devastation on Melanie's face confirmed it had hit its mark. Good night, Melanie, Victor said, heading up the stairs. Do try to be quiet while packing. The children need their rest. The next morning, Victor woke Connor and Natalie himself. Where's Mom? Connor asked sleepily. Victor sat on the edge of his son's bed. Your mother had to leave town unexpectedly. A family emergency with Aunt Pamela. She didn't say goodbye, Connor noted, immediately suspicious. It happened very late, Victor explained. She didn't want to wake you. She'll call tonight. Another lie, but a necessary one. Melanie would indeed call. Mitchell would ensure it. But the conversation would be monitored and limited. Over breakfast, Victor received a text from Lawrence Kessler. We need to meet. Immediately. The second phase was proceeding on schedule. By noon, Victor sat across from his business rival in Kessler's office. These documents, Kessler began without preamble, sliding a folder across the desk. What did you get them? Does it matter? Victor countered. What matters is what they prove, namely, that your attempted corporate espionage has left evidence significant enough for a federal investigation. Kessler's face flushed. Dunleavy approached me. I never sought him out. An irrelevant distinction to prosecutors, Victor noted, but potentially relevant to me. What do you want, Reeves? Victor smiled thinly. The Burlington Street properties. All of them. Signed over to my holding company by end of business tomorrow. That's extortion. I prefer to call it negotiation, Victor replied. Alternatively, these documents reach the SEC by morning. Kessler stared at him with naked hatred. The properties are worth 3 times what you offered last year. Yes, Victor agreed. And your freedom is worth considerably more. Choose wisely. When Kessler eventually nodded in defeat, Victor felt no triumph, only the cold satisfaction of inevitability. The pieces were falling precisely where he'd placed them. That evening, as promised, Melanie called to speak with the children. Victor monitored every word, his hand hovering over the disconnect button. When are you coming home? Connor asked her. Melanie's voice trembled slightly. Not for a while, sweetheart. Aunt Pamela needs me here. But what about my game on Saturday? I'm sorry, she said. Your father will be there. Victor always was. After the children went to bed, Victor retreated to his study, reviewing the day's developments. Mitchell reported that Alexander had indeed accepted the plea deal, providing detailed testimony against Kessler. The artist studio had been thoroughly searched, yielding evidence planted weeks ago by Victor's team. Evidence that implicated Melanie far more deeply than reality warranted. Everything was proceeding according to plan, yet Victor felt oddly hollow. Not from doubt, he never doubted, but from a recognition that his revenge, while satisfying, was incomplete. Melanie had shown her true nature, but she still believed she understood the full scope of his response. She didn't. No one ever did. Chapter 6. Shadows and Substrates. 1 week after Melanie's departure, Victor implemented the third phase of his plan. The children had been told their mother was helping a sick relative, a fiction that would soon require expansion. He arranged a family dinner with Boyd and his wife Teresa, knowing information would flow back to Melanie through this channel. "I've been so worried about Melanie," Teresa said over dessert. "Is there any update on Pamela's condition?" Victor sighed heavily, his expression grave. "The doctors aren't optimistic. It's why Melanie's stay has been extended indefinitely." Boyd studied Victor carefully. They hadn't spoken privately since the anniversary party confrontation. "Has anyone else from the family gone to help?" Boyd asked, his question loaded with subtext. Melanie insisted on handling it alone. Victor replied smoothly. "She feels it's complicated enough without adding more people to the situation." After dinner, while Natalie showed Teresa her college portfolio, Boyd cornered Victor in his study. "I know Pamela isn't sick," he said flatly. "What's really happening with my sister?" Victor closed the door. "Your sister is establishing residence in Chicago for divorce proceedings following her affair with Alexander Dunleavy and their conspiracy to defraud me of millions." Boyd flinched. "Does anyone else know?" "No, and they won't, provided Melanie follows the agreement." "This will destroy her," Boyd stated. "She made her choice," Victor countered. "Multiple choices, actually, each one moving her closer to this outcome." Boyd's expression hardened. "She's still my sister, and these are still my terms," Victor replied, his voice cooling. "Unless you'd prefer I pursue criminal charges? The evidence is substantial." The threat hung between them until Boyd looked away. "What do you need from me?" "Continue the story about Pamela's illness. Support whatever narrative Melanie creates during her calls with the children. In exchange, your gambling debts, all of them, disappear permanently." Boyd's face flushed with shame. "You know about those?" "I've always known," Victor said. "Just as I've always known about the money Melanie sent you from our accounts. The difference is I chose not to use that information until now." The next morning, Victor met with his legal team to finalize the divorce strategy. The lawyers expressed concern about potential challenges. Mrs. Reeves could claim coercion regarding the prenuptial amendment, one cautioned. "She could," Victor acknowledged. "But the notary will testify otherwise, as will the witnesses. And by then, the evidence of her conspiracy with Dunleavy will be public record. Still, courts tend to favor mothers in custody disputes." Victor smiled thinly. "Not mothers who abandon their children for lovers and criminal schemes." That afternoon, he received confirmation that Kessler had signed over the Burlington Street properties, prime downtown real estate Victor had coveted for years. The transaction was structured through shell companies. Phase 4 began with a seemingly innocuous call to Detective Cox. "I need a favor," Victor said. "Something discreet." "Of course, Mr. Reeves. I want Dunleavy's studio thoroughly documented before evidence is removed. Every painting, sketch, and document. Especially any works featuring my wife." "May I ask why?" "Insurance," Victor replied simply. The real purpose became clear 3 days later when Melanie's attorney contacted Victor's legal team, requesting modifications to the divorce terms. "My client finds the financial settlement inadequate given the length of the marriage and her contributions to Mr. Reeves' success." Victor authorized his attorney to present copies of select evidence. Not all, just enough to demonstrate the depth of documentation. Additionally, his lawyer added, "We have cataloged extensive artwork by Mr. Dunleavy featuring Mrs. Reeves in compromising positions. Should this proceed to court, these would necessarily become public record." The next day, Melanie's attorney withdrew the objections. At home, Victor maintained perfect normalcy for the children. He attended Connor's baseball games, helped Natalie prepare her college applications, and ensured their routine remained uninterrupted despite their mother's absence. During Melanie's scheduled calls, he monitored every word, though she never deviated from the established narrative. Her voice grew increasingly strained as weeks passed. the isolation in Chicago wearing on her as intended. 2 months after her departure, Victor received an unexpected call from Alexander Dunleavy. "We need to talk," the artist said without preamble. "I have nothing to discuss with you," Victor replied coldly. "It's about Melanie. She's not well." Victor paused. "Elaborate." "She's talking about exposing everything. Going to the press. She says she'd rather destroy you both than live like this." This development was not entirely unexpected, but its timing was concerning. The divorce wasn't yet finalized. "Where is she now?" "At her apartment. I visited yesterday. I'm still technically on bail." "Victor, she's desperate." "And why are you telling me this?" Victor asked. "Your loyalty clearly lies with her." Alexander laughed bitterly. "My loyalty is to myself. The plea deal spares me prison, but my career is finished. Galleries won't touch me. I have nothing left to lose. Melanie still does." Victor considered this. "Stay away from her. I'll handle it." That evening, after the children were asleep, Victor called Melanie directly for the first time since she'd left. "I understand you're planning something unwise," he said when she answered. Her laugh was brittle. "Alexander told you." "Of course he did." "Whatever you're considering will only hurt the children," Victor said calmly. "Don't pretend this is about them," she snapped. "This has always been about your control, your ego." "Perhaps," he conceded, "but the consequences remain the same. Expose our situation publicly, and you lose everything, including any relationship with Natalie and Connor. They deserve to know what kind of man their father really is, and what kind of mother abandoned them for an affair." Victor countered. "Think carefully, Melanie. You haven't seen a fraction of what I've prepared." The silence stretched between them. "I can't live like this," she finally said, her voice breaking. "Exiled, monitored, visiting my own children like a stranger." For a moment, something almost like sympathy stirred in Victor. "Almost. You created this situation," he reminded her. "But I'm not unreasonable. Maintain the established narrative, finalize the divorce without incident, and in 6 months, we could discuss revising the visitation schedule." It was a calculated offer, specific enough to provide hope, vague enough to maintain control. "And if I agree, you receive an additional $20,000 per month. The stipend becomes permanent rather than contingent. And I don't release the more explicit evidence to Natalie and Connor when they turn 21. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed his suspicion. Her greatest fear wasn't public exposure, but losing her children's love. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I would," he corrected, "unless given sufficient reason not to." The next day, Melanie's attorney contacted Victor's legal team to accelerate the divorce proceedings. Phase 4 was complete. That evening, Victor sat in his study reviewing security footage from Melanie's Chicago apartment. Cameras installed before her arrival, monitoring her every move. On screen, she paced her living room, phone to her ear. "He's won, Boyd." Her voice came through clearly. "For now." Victor smiled. The qualifier was telling. Melanie still harbored hopes of eventual victory. She hadn't yet grasped the fundamental truth. Victor didn't fight battles. He orchestrated surrenders. His phone rang. Natalie, calling from college. "Hey, Dad. I was thinking of visiting Mom next weekend. Is that okay?" Victor stiffened. This was unexpected. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll arrange the flights." After hanging up, he immediately called Mitchell. "I need surveillance increased on my daughter at Wellesley. All communications monitored. Focus on any contact with her mother." "You think Mrs. Reeves is trying to turn her?" Mitchell asked. "I think Melanie understands that Natalie is my weakness," Victor replied. "And desperation breeds creativity." What Melanie didn't understand was that Victor had anticipated this move months ago. Natalie's devices had been compromised long before the anniversary party. Her seemingly spontaneous desire to visit her mother was anything but. Victor opened his laptop and reviewed recent exchanges between mother and daughter. Melanie had been careful. No direct accusations against Victor, no mention of the true circumstances. Instead, subtle suggestions of loneliness, oblique references to complicated adult situations. He picked up the phone again and dialed Detective Cox. "I need a favor in Chicago." Chapter 7. Fractured Reflections. The Chicago wind cut through Victor's coat as he stood outside the apartment building where Melanie had been living for the past 3 months. He'd arrived ahead of Natalie, whose flight would land in 2 hours, giving him time for this unscheduled confrontation. Security footage had shown Melanie preparing for Natalie's visit with uncharacteristic energy, removing the sparse furnishings Victor had provided, replacing them with tasteful pieces that strained her limited budget, creating an illusion of normalcy. Victor had no intention of allowing that illusion to take root. Using the key he'd retained, he entered her apartment to find her arranging flowers in the living room. She froze at the sight of him. "Victor, what are you doing here?" "Insurance," he replied, closing the door behind him, making certain our agreement remains intact during Natalie's visit. Melanie's face hardened. "I haven't violated any terms." "Not explicitly," he conceded, moving further into the apartment. "But your recent conversations with our daughter contain concerning undertones." Color drained from her face. "You're monitoring my calls with Natalie?" "I'm protecting my interests," he corrected, examining a framed photograph of the family that Melanie had placed prominently on the mantel. "Interesting choice of decor." "She's still my daughter," Melanie said defiantly. "You can control my finances, my reputation, even my freedom, but you can't erase 17 years of motherhood." Victor turned to face her. "I have no intention of erasing anything. I simply ensure that history is recorded accurately." "Is that what this is? Historical preservation?" She laughed bitterly. "You're punishing me for wanting something of my own." "I'm responding to betrayal," he countered. "There's a difference." Melanie stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Do you know why I chose Alexander? Because with him, I wasn't just an accessory to someone else's success. I wasn't just Victor Reeve's wife or Natalie and Connor's mother. I was Melanie, and now you're neither," Victor observed coldly. A fitting outcome for someone who valued identity over responsibility. Her eyes flashed. "You never loved me. You acquired me, like everything else in your life." "Perhaps," he acknowledged, "but I honored our contract. You didn't." The truth hung between them, stark and irreversible. For 15 years, they'd built a life together, one founded on Victor's terms but sustained by mutual commitment, until Melanie decided the terms no longer suited her. "Natalie will be here soon," Victor continued. "During her visit, you will maintain our established narrative. You will not hint at discord between us. You will not suggest that your extended absence is anything but necessary family support. And if I don't..." Victor removed an envelope from his coat. Then instead of returning to Wellesley, "Natalie receives these." He extracted several photographs, images of Melanie and Alexander in intimate moments, along with bank records showing money you diverted from her college fund to finance your affair. Melanie recoiled. "You wouldn't." "I've done worse for less," he reminded her. "Don't test me, Melanie." After leaving her apartment, Victor met Detective Cox at a nearby cafe. "Is everything prepared?" he asked. Cox nodded. "The wiretap is active. Recording devices installed in all rooms. We'll have complete coverage of their conversations. And if Melanie attempts to leave with Natalie, officers are positioned to intercept," Cox assured him. "Though the tracker on your daughter's phone provides additional security." Victor nodded, satisfied with the arrangements. "Keep me updated hourly. Any deviation from protocol, any attempt at disclosure, I want to know immediately." While waiting for Natalie's plane to land, Victor called Connor, who was staying with Boyd and Teresa for the weekend. "How's everything, son?" "Fine," Connor replied, his teenage terseness in full effect. "Uncle Boyd's taking me fishing tomorrow." "Sounds fun," Victor said, carefully casual. "Has your mother called today?" "Yeah, this morning. She seemed weird." Victor tensed. "Weird how?" "I don't know. Sad, I guess. She kept saying how much she misses us. Asked if we were okay without her." "What did you tell her?" Connor's voice hardened slightly. "That we're fine. That you're taking care of everything." Victor smiled, recognizing the loyalty in his son's response. "That's right. We're managing just fine." After hanging up, Victor received a text from Mitchell. Natalie landed. En route to apartment now. For the next 36 hours, Victor remained in his hotel room, monitoring transcripts of conversations between mother and daughter. Melanie adhered to their agreement, maintaining the fiction of her extended stay. Natalie seemed to accept the explanation, though occasional questions suggested lingering doubt. "It's just weird that you can't come home even for weekends," Natalie remarked during dinner their first night. "Aunt Pamela needs consistency," Melanie replied. "The doctors say routine is crucial for her recovery." "Dad seems different without you," Natalie continued. "More intense." "Your father has always been intense about the things he values," Melanie said carefully. "His family most of all." The exchange was a masterclass in controlled conversation, Melanie navigating dangerous waters without triggering Victor's intervention. On Sunday morning, hours before Natalie's departure, Victor received an urgent call from Mitchell. "Sir, we have a situation. Mrs. Reeves just received a visitor. Alexander Dunleavy." Victor's grip tightened on his phone. "What? He's violating his bail conditions." "Yes, sir. And based on their conversation, it appears deliberate. They're planning something." "I'm on my way," Victor said, already heading for the door. "Have Cox ready to intervene." When he arrived at Melanie's building, he found Detective Cox waiting in the lobby. "They're still upstairs," Cox reported. "Based on the audio, Dunleavy is trying to convince her daughter that her mother is being forced to stay away from home." "Has he mentioned our agreement specifically?" "Not yet, but he's getting close." Victor's jaw tightened. "Arrest him. Now." "Violation of bail conditions." "And Mrs. Reeves?" "Leave her to me." They took the elevator to the 5th floor, Cox radioing his officers to position themselves. Outside Melanie's door, they could hear raised voices. "Your father is manipulating everything," Alexander was saying. "Your mother didn't leave by choice." "What are you talking about?" Natalie's voice sounded confused, alarmed. "There was no sick aunt," Melanie admitted, her voice breaking. "Your father forced me to leave after he discovered my relationship with Alexander." Victor nodded to Cox, who signaled his officers. They burst through the door, weapons drawn. "Alexander Dunleavy," Cox announced formally, "you're under arrest for violation of bail conditions." The scene froze in tableau. Alexander standing beside Melanie, Natalie on the couch, her face a mask of shock. As officers handcuffed Alexander, Natalie's eyes found her father in the doorway. "Dad, what's happening?" Victor stepped into the apartment, his expression controlled despite the rage building within him. "Your mother's friend, Mr. Dunleavy, is not supposed to be here. He's currently awaiting trial for fraud and corporate espionage." Natalie turned to Melanie. "Mom? What is he talking about?" Before Melanie could respond, Victor continued. "I'd hoped to spare you this, Natalie, but it seems your mother has different priorities." "Don't," Melanie pleaded. "Victor, please." He ignored her. "Your mother has been living in Chicago as part of our divorce proceedings, not caring for any sick relative. She chose to leave our family for Mr. Dunleavy, whom she's been involved with for some time." Natalie's expression crumpled. "You've been lying to me? Both of you." "I wanted to tell you," Melanie insisted, reaching for her daughter. "But the terms of our agreement." "Agreement?" Natalie interrupted, pulling away. "What agreement?" "The one your mother signed after I discovered her affair," Victor explained clinically, "along with her plans to abscond with company funds. The terms were clear: maintain the established narrative or face criminal charges." "This isn't how I wanted you to find out," Melanie said, tears streaming down her face. "How did you want me to find out that my mother abandoned us?" Natalie demanded, her voice rising. "In a text? A phone call?" As officers led Alexander away, Victor placed a hand on Natalie's shoulder. "Let's get you back to the hotel. Your flight to Boston leaves in a few hours." "No," she shrugged off his touch. "I want to know everything. Right now." For the next hour, in Melanie's sparse living room, the truth unraveled in all its ugly complexity. Victor presented selected evidence of Melanie's betrayal: text messages, hotel receipts, financial transfers. He carefully omitted his own manipulations, presenting himself as the wronged party who had tried to protect his children from painful truths. Melanie attempted to counter with her own version, acknowledging the affair but highlighting Victor's controlling nature, the suffocation she'd felt in their marriage. "He orchestrated everything," she insisted. "The timing, the evidence, all of it designed for maximum damage. Because you gave me cause, Victor replied evenly. Everything that's happened is the direct result of your choices, Melanie. By the time they finished, Natalie sat rigidly between her parents, her face tear-streaked but composed. I want to go home, she said finally. Not to the hotel, not to Boston. Home to Sudbury. Victor nodded. I'll arrange it. On the private flight back to Massachusetts, Natalie remained silent, staring out the window. Victor respected her space, reviewing work documents until she finally spoke. Did you ever love her? He looked up, considering the question carefully. I believed I did. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have, he replied honestly. Your mother was everything I thought I wanted. Until she wasn't. Natalie studied him. You're not even angry, are you? Not really. It's like you've been playing chess the whole time. Victor set his papers aside. Anger is unproductive. I prefer resolution. Is that what this is? Resolution? It's justice, he corrected. Actions have consequences. Your mother chose her path, knowing the risks. Natalie shook her head. It's punishment, Dad. Don't pretend it's anything else. When they landed, Natalie asked to be taken directly to Boyd's house rather than home. I need to see Connor, she explained. He deserves to hear this from me, not from strangers. Victor agreed, respecting her decision while recognizing its implications. The controlled narrative he'd maintained was unraveling. Within hours, both children would know the truth, or at least the version of truth he'd allowed to emerge. That night, alone in his study, Victor received a call from Boyd. The kids are staying with us tonight, his brother-in-law said without preamble. They need space to process. Understandable, Victor replied. How much does Connor know? Everything Natalie knows, Boyd said, which I suspect isn't actually everything. Victor ignored the implication. Tell them I'm here when they're ready to talk. After hanging up, he called Mitchell. I need you to monitor Boyd's house. All communications, movements. Are you expecting problems, sir? I'm insuring against them, Victor corrected. Now that the children know a version of the truth, Melanie may attempt direct contact. As midnight approached, Victor stood at his study window, contemplating the accelerated timeline. The controlled dismantling of Melanie's life had been disrupted, forcing adaptations to his strategy. Not ideal, but manageable. His phone chimed with a text from Detective Cox, Dunleavy talking. Claims evidence against him was planted. Requesting deal for full disclosure. Victor smiled thinly. Let him talk. The evidence trail had been constructed too carefully, corroborated too thoroughly. Alexander's desperate accusations would only appear self-serving. Another text arrived, this one from a number he didn't recognize. When he opened it, his blood chilled. I know what you did to Frank Donovan. Proof arriving tomorrow. A friend. Frank Donovan. The name Victor had buried a decade ago. The contractor who disappeared after threatening to expose corners cut on Victor's earliest development projects. The man whose family still believed he'd abandoned them for parts unknown. Victor stared at the message, an unfamiliar sensation coursing through him. Not fear exactly, but recognition. Someone else had been playing chess all along. Chapter 8. Tectonic Shifts. By Monday morning, Victor had identified the source of the mysterious text. A burner phone purchased in Chicago 3 days earlier. The timing suggested Melanie's involvement, but the reference to Frank Donovan indicated deeper research. Someone had been digging into Victor's past. Someone with resources and motivation. He arrived at his office earlier than usual, instructing his security team to intensify surveillance on Melanie, Alexander, and Lawrence Kessler. Any of them might have orchestrated this countermove. Denise greeted him with her usual efficiency. Mr. Reeves, your 9 o'clock with the Burlington Street investors is confirmed. Also, you have a package that arrived by courier this morning. Victor froze. What kind of package? Just a large envelope. I've placed it on your desk with the morning mail. Inside his office, Victor examined the unmarked manila envelope without touching it. Standard size, no visible irregularities. After donning gloves, he carefully opened it to find a USB drive and a single sheet of paper bearing one sentence. The past doesn't stay buried. He plugged the drive into an isolated laptop kept specifically for security risks. It contained a single video file, security footage from a construction site, dated September 17, 2013. The night Frank Donovan disappeared. Victor watched with growing tension as the grainy footage showed him meeting Donovan near an excavated foundation. Their argument was inaudible, but clearly heated. Then, the damning moment, Donovan turning to leave, Victor grabbing his shoulder, the struggle that sent Donovan tumbling backward into the concrete-lined pit. The footage ended there, showing neither Victor's panicked descent into the pit nor his discovery that Donovan had broken his neck in the fall. It didn't show Victor's decision to conceal the body within the foundation before concrete was poured the next morning. The evidence was both compelling and incomplete, enough to raise serious questions, but not enough to prove murder. Still, even the suggestion would be devastating to everything Victor had built. He destroyed the drive immediately, crushing it before burning the components. The question remained, who possessed the original footage, and what did they want? His phone rang. Natalie. Dad? Can we talk? Connor and I are ready to come home. Of course, he replied, maintaining his composure despite the threat hanging over him. I'll send a car right away. While waiting for his children, Victor initiated containment protocols. He called his head of security, authorized unlimited resources to identify the source of the footage, and instructed his legal team to prepare responses to potential accusations regarding Donovan's disappearance. By noon, Natalie and Connor were seated across from him in the family room, their expressions reflecting different aspects of the same trauma. Natalie's eyes showing betrayal, Connor's anger. I want to hear your side, Natalie began. The whole truth. Victor chose his words carefully. Your mother and I have had problems for some time. She found comfort with someone else, someone who encouraged her to take actions that would have harmed our family financially and legally. So you exiled her, Connor stated flatly. Cut her off from everything. I protected what was ours, Victor corrected, including your futures. By lying to us, Natalie countered. By shielding you, he insisted, until I could find a way to explain the situation without destroying your relationship with your mother. Connor's jaw tightened. She abandoned us. What relationship is there to destroy? She didn't abandon you, Victor said, surprising himself with this moment of fairness toward Melanie. She made poor choices regarding our marriage, but she never stopped loving you. The concession was calculated, a demonstration of reasonableness that would contrast with whatever accusations might soon emerge against him. I want to see her, Connor announced suddenly. In person, not these stupid monitored phone calls. Victor nodded. That can be arranged. Without you controlling everything, Natalie added. An actual conversation without scripts or surveillance. This presented complications, but refusing would only deepen their suspicions. I'll make the arrangements. After the children retreated to their rooms, Victor received another text from the unknown number. The Donovan footage is merely a sample. Meet to discuss terms. Pier 14, midnight. An obvious trap, but unavoidable. Whatever leverage this unknown adversary possessed, Victor needed to assess it directly. He spent the afternoon preparing, reviewing security measures at his home, ensuring the children would remain safe during his absence, and arranging discreet backup for the meeting. At 6 p.m., Mitchell called with news. We've traced recent communications between Mrs. Reeves and Lawrence Kessler, he reported. Multiple calls in the past week, including a meeting yesterday. The alliance made strategic sense. Both have been damaged by Victor's machinations. Together, they might have resources to threaten his empire. Continue monitoring, Victor instructed, and place additional surveillance on Kessler's properties. At 11:30 p.m., Victor arrived near Pier 14, instructing his security team to maintain distance. The industrial waterfront was deserted, illuminated only by scattered security lights. Precisely at midnight, a figure emerged from shadows at the pier's end, a woman, her face obscured. As Victor approached cautiously, recognition dawned. Not Melanie, not one of Kessler's associates. Pamela Porter, Melanie's supposedly ill sister. Hello, Victor, she said, her voice carrying on the cold air. Thank you for coming. Pamela, he acknowledged. I assumed the fiction of your illness was convenient for multiple purposes. She smiled thinly. My sister needed an alibi. I needed time to research your vulnerabilities. And now you believe you've found one, Victor noted. The Donovan matter. Among others, she confirmed. I've spent months compiling evidence of your more questionable business practices. Donovan is merely the most dramatic example. Victor studied her with new respect. While he'd focused on Melanie, Alexander, and Kessler, this overlooked sister had been methodically building a case against him. What do you want? He asked directly. Justice for my sister, Pamela replied. The divorce agreement rewritten on fair terms. Full restoration of her parental rights. No further interference in her life. Or the evidence goes to the authorities. All of it. Victor considered his options carefully. The Donovan footage is circumstantial at best. An unfortunate accident that I handled poorly, not murder. Perhaps, Pamela conceded. But combined with documented safety violations at 3 other development sites, financial irregularities in city contract bids, and your systematic harassment of Melanie since your separation, it creates a compelling narrative. You've been thorough, Victor acknowledged. I learned from watching you, she countered. How you dismantled my sister's life piece by piece. The same meticulous attention to detail, just without your resources. And if I agree to your terms? What guarantee do I have that this evidence won't emerge later? Pamela removed an envelope from her coat. A contract, drafted by my attorney. It establishes a trust that holds all evidence to be destroyed upon fulfillment of the specified conditions. Victor took the envelope without opening it. I'll need time to review this. 24 hours, Pamela stated firmly. After that, everything goes to the district attorney. As they parted ways, Victor felt a grudging admiration for this unexpected adversary. She had identified his vulnerability with precision, not his business empire or even his freedom, but his carefully cultivated legacy. The public exposure of Frank Donovan's death would irreparably taint everything he'd built. Back home, Victor reviewed the contract with cold calculation. The terms were straightforward. Melanie would receive 30% of their marital assets, unrestricted visitation with the children, and complete autonomy in her professional life. In exchange, all evidence of Victor's past transgressions would be sealed permanently. He called Mitchell. I need complete information on Pamela Porter's movements for the past 6 months. Every meeting, every call, every financial transaction. Do we consider her hostile? Mitchell asked. Extremely, Victor confirmed, and more dangerous than her sister ever was. Throughout the night, Victor formulated countermeasures. By dawn, he developed a dual strategy, appearing to negotiate while systematically undermining Pamela's position. His first call was to Boyd. I need your help with Pamela, he said without preamble. My wife's sister? Boyd asked, confusion evident. What about her? She's inserted herself into the situation between Melanie and me. I need to understand her vulnerabilities. Boyd hesitated. Pamela has always been protective of Melanie, even as children. That's not what I'm asking, Victor pressed. I need leverage. Jesus, Victor, Boyd said, audibly uncomfortable. Haven't you done enough? This isn't about punishment anymore, Victor explained. It's about protection, mine and the children's. After further persuasion, Boyd reluctantly revealed what he knew. Pamela's history of depression, her strained marriage to a commodities trader, her fierce loyalty to Melanie that sometimes bordered on obsession. Victor's next call was to Detective Cox, instructing him to investigate Pamela's financial records for irregularities. By noon, the first results arrived. Pamela had withdrawn substantial sums from her retirement accounts over the past 6 months, presumably to finance her investigation into Victor's past. More significantly, Mitchell discovered that Pamela had been consulting with Lawrence Kessler for weeks. The business rival had provided both funding and connections to former employees from Victor's company, employees with knowledge of the Donovan situation. The alliance confirmed Victor's suspicion. This wasn't merely about justice for Melanie. It was a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. At 3 p.m., Victor contacted Pamela. I've reviewed your proposal. We should discuss modifications. There are no modifications, she replied firmly. Those are the terms. Then you should know that I've identified your collaborators, Victor countered, including Lawrence Kessler. His involvement transforms this from a family matter into corporate espionage. A pause. That's irrelevant to our agreement. On the contrary, Victor said smoothly, it's highly relevant to my response. If Kessler is involved, this isn't about Melanie's welfare. It's about dismantling my company. The terms remain unchanged, Pamela insisted. Midnight tonight. After hanging up, Victor accelerated his countermeasures. He instructed his legal team to file preemptive motions regarding potential slander and corporate espionage. He authorized security protocols that would immediately lock down all company servers if allegations became public. Most crucially, he contacted 3 board members of Kessler's company, revealing evidence of their CEO's involvement in potential blackmail and suggesting this reckless behavior warranted review of his leadership. By evening, Victor received confirmation that Kessler had been called to an emergency board meeting. The pressure was beginning to fracture the alliance against him. At 10 p.m., with 2 hours remaining before Pamela's deadline, Victor received an unexpected visitor, Alexander Dunleavy. Your security let me through, the artist explained, standing uncomfortably in Victor's foyer. I told them it was urgent. Indeed, Victor studied him coldly. What could possibly be urgent between us? Pamela Porter, Alexander said simply. She's unstable. This vendetta against you, it's gone beyond helping Melanie. Victor's interest sharpened. Explain. She's not just gathering evidence. She's manufacturing it, pressuring former employees to corroborate stories that aren't entirely true. Editing surveillance footage. Why are you telling me this? Victor asked, suspicion evident. Alexander looked away. Because I still care about Melanie. And this path Pamela's on, it doesn't end well for anyone. Including you, Victor noted. If falsified evidence is presented to authorities, your testimony becomes compromised. There's that too, Alexander admitted. I've made enough mistakes. I don't need perjury added to the list. Victor considered this unexpected ally carefully. What exactly has Pamela altered? The Donovan footage. The original showed the fall clearly as an accident. The version she's prepared to release has been edited to appear more deliberate. This information changed everything. If Pamela was manipulating evidence, her entire case could collapse under scrutiny. I need proof of this tampering, Victor stated. Alexander nodded. I can get it, but I want something in return. Of course you do, Victor said dryly. Drop the additional charges against me. Let me plead to the minimal fraud count, serve my time, and start over somewhere else. The request was reasonable, considering the value of the information. Agreed, provided the evidence is conclusive. After Alexander left, Victor called his security team. I want Pamela Porter under surveillance immediately. If she attempts to contact any media or law enforcement, intercept her. At 11:30 p.m., with 30 minutes remaining before the deadline, Victor received the proof he needed. Footage from Alexander's phone showing Pamela directing a video technician to alter the Donovan surveillance video, specifically requesting that Victor's gestures be made to appear more aggressive. Victor immediately called Detective Cox, forwarding the evidence of tampering. This constitutes attempted blackmail and falsification of evidence, he explained. I want her arrested tonight. On your word alone? Cox asked hesitantly. On the evidence I've provided, Victor corrected. And there's more. Financial records showing payments to former employees for false testimony. Conspiracy with Lawrence Kessler to damage my company through fraudulent claims. Cox sighed. I'll need more than allegations, Mr. Reeves. You'll have them within the hour, Victor promised. At midnight, instead of meeting Pamela as arranged, Victor watched from his home security center as police officers approached her hotel room. The expression on her face when they handcuffed her, shock dissolving into rage, confirmed what Victor had suspected. She had underestimated him, just as Melanie had. By morning, the situation had transformed entirely. Pamela faced serious charges of evidence tampering and attempted extortion. Lawrence Kessler had been suspended by his board pending investigation. Alexander had provided a comprehensive statement detailing the conspiracy against Victor. Most significantly, Melanie had called Victor directly, her voice hollow with defeat. "What have you done to my sister?" "I've responded to criminal actions appropriately," he replied evenly. "Just as I did with you." "This will never end, will it?" she asked quietly. "Your need to destroy everyone who challenges you." "It could end," Victor suggested, "with a revised agreement. One that allows you access to the children while ensuring certain protections for me." The silence stretched between them. "What kind of protections?" she finally asked. "A comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. Surrender of all materials related to my business practices. Permanent severance of your relationship with Alexander Dunleavy." Another long pause. "And in return, 30% of our marital assets, as Pamela requested. Unrestricted visitation with the children. Your professional autonomy restored." "Why now?" Melanie questioned. "After everything you've done to isolate me?" Victor considered his answer carefully. "Because the children know enough truth now that continued deception serves no purpose. And because I prefer resolution to perpetual conflict." It wasn't the complete answer. The full truth was more complex. Victor had recognized that maintaining total control over Melanie had become more costly than allowing her constrained freedom. Like any shrewd businessman, he adapted to changing conditions. "I'll consider it," Melanie said finally. After hanging up, Victor turned his attention to removing all traces of the Donovan evidence. The original footage was secured. Witnesses had been discredited through Pamela's tampering. The threat was contained. Yet something unfamiliar lingered in Victor's thoughts. Not regret. He never permitted himself that luxury. Perhaps recognition that the victory felt hollow compared to the damage inflicted on his family. His phone rang again. "Natalie." "I heard about Aunt Pamela," she said. "Connor's upset." "She made poor choices," Victor replied. "Like your mother." "Like you," Natalie countered. "I'm not blind, Dad. I see what you've done. To all of them." The challenge in her voice was new, his daughter developing teeth. "What I've done," Victor said carefully, "is protect what matters." "At what cost?" she asked. "Mom's gone. Aunt Pamela's arrested. Alexander's career is destroyed. Is that worth it?" Victor considered his daughter's question with uncharacteristic introspection. "They chose their paths, and you chose yours," Natalie said softly. "I just hope you don't expect us to choose it too." After hanging up, Victor stood at his study window, watching snow begin to fall again. The symmetry wasn't lost on him. Another winter, another reshaping of his family's landscape. He had won, as he always did. Yet his children's perception of him had fundamentally changed. They'd glimpsed the man behind the father, the ruthlessness he'd always hidden from them. That night, Victor made additions to his contingency journal. This time, the contingency wasn't for business disaster or legal trouble. It was for something he'd never previously considered: the possibility of losing his children's loyalty entirely. Chapter 9. Scorched Foundations. 6 months after Pamela's arrest, Victor sat alone in his study reviewing final divorce documents. The settlement had been negotiated exactly as he'd outlined to Melanie. 30% of assets in exchange for comprehensive non-disclosure. Outside, summer had transformed the Sudbury property. Through the window, Victor could see Connor practicing batting in the yard, his movements precise and controlled. The boy had changed since learning the truth. Harder, more reserved, less willing to accept Victor's explanations at face value. Natalie had changed too. Now in her second year at Wellesley, she visited less frequently, her conversations with Victor increasingly careful, as though mapping dangerous terrain. She maintained contact with Melanie despite Victor's subtle discouragement, sometimes taking Connor for authorized visits. Victor signed the final page of the divorce agreement, noting the elegance of its terms. Melanie would receive financial freedom without access to company information. The children would maintain relationships with both parents without being forced to choose sides. The public narrative would remain controlled, an amicable separation rather than bitter betrayal. All his objectives met. A perfect strategic outcome. Yet Victor felt no satisfaction as he slid the documents into their envelope. The victory had come at unexpected cost. Not financial or legal, but something more fundamental. something he hadn't properly valued in his calculations. His phone chimed with a text from Mitchell. Mrs. Reeves has received the Burlington Gallery offer as arranged. Another component of Victor's resolution, ensuring Melanie received a prestigious curatorial position through intermediaries she wouldn't recognize as his. Not charity, but strategic placement. Victor preferred keeping all relevant parties within his sphere of influence, even after formal separation. He was reviewing quarterly projections when Natalie arrived unexpectedly, letting herself in with her key. "Dad, you here?" In the study, he called, closing his laptop. She entered carrying a small box, her expression guarded. At 20, she had fully shed her adolescence, her features settling into a striking resemblance to Melanie's, though her calculating gaze was unmistakably Victor's. "I found something at Mom's new place," she said without preamble. "Something you should see." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Natalie opened the box and removed a familiar leather journal. This was in her storage unit. "It's yours, isn't it?" Victor froze, recognizing his contingency journal, the one containing detailed plans for various disasters, including corporate sabotage, political damage control, and yes, protocols for handling Frank Donovan's accidental death. "Where did she get this?" he asked carefully. "She said it was in your closet. She took it before leaving, thinking it might contain financial information." Natalie's eyes held his. "I read it, Dad." Victor maintained his composure through decades of practice control. "And Donovan," she said simply, "the contractor who disappeared. You wrote about it in detail." "A contingency plan," Victor countered smoothly. "I developed them for all possible scenarios, including false accusations." "The plan was created before he disappeared," Natalie pointed out, "and it describes exactly what happened afterward." Victor assessed his options rapidly. Denial would insult Natalie's intelligence. Full confession would be legally dangerous. Partial truth might preserve what remained of their relationship. "Donovan's death was an accident," he said finally. "My response to it was professionally calculated rather than morally sound." "You concealed a man's death," Natalie stated flatly. "Left his family wondering for years." "Yes," Victor acknowledged, seeing no benefit in further deception. "I made a decision based on protecting what I'd built, for myself and eventually for you and Connor." Natalie set the journal on his desk. "Mom doesn't know what's in here. She never read it, but I did." The significance settled between them. Natalie had discovered damning evidence against her father, but chosen not to share it with Melanie, who could have used it in their divorce negotiations. "Why bring it to me?" Victor asked. "Because I need to understand," she replied, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Not just what you did, but who you are. The man who raised me to believe in honesty while building his life on calculated deceptions." Victor leaned back in his chair, studying his daughter. The moment required absolute precision. Not manipulation, but genuine connection, something he'd rarely prioritized. "I'm exactly who I've always been, Natalie. Someone who identifies objectives and achieves them through whatever means necessary." He paused. "The difference is that you now see methods previously hidden from you." "Methods?" she repeated incredulously. "Is that what you call destroying Mom? Or what happened to Donovan?" "I call them necessary responses to threats," Victor stated calmly. "Your mother conspired with Alexander and Kessler to take everything. Not just money, but you and Connor as well. Donovan threatened projects that employed hundreds and supported your future. So the ends justify any means?" Natalie challenged. "Not any means," Victor corrected. "Calculated ones. Proportional response." Natalie laughed bitterly. "There is nothing proportional about what you did to Mom. You systematically dismantled her life piece by piece. And she systematically planned to dismantle mine," Victor countered. "The difference is that I was better at it." They regarded each other in tense silence, the gulf between them wider than the physical distance across his desk. "Connor deserves to know," Natalie finally said. "Know what?" "That his father protects what's his." Victor's voice hardened slightly. "That betrayal has consequences? That the moral absolutes you've taught us are flexible when applied to yourself," she clarified. Victor considered this criticism with surprising objectivity. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps his greatest deception had been portraying himself as something other than what he was, a man who valued results above principles when necessary. "What do you want from me, Natalie?" he asked directly. "Acknowledgement," she replied, "that what you did went beyond protection into vengeance, that you enjoyed watching Mom suffer." The accusation struck with unexpected force because it contained truth Victor rarely acknowledged, even to himself. There had been satisfaction in Melanie's systematic downfall, not just strategic accomplishment, but emotional gratification. "Perhaps," he conceded finally. "Does that change anything?" "It changes how I see you," Natalie said quietly. "And it changes what I'll tell Connor." Victor tensed. "What exactly do you intend to tell him?" "The truth. That you're brilliant and protective and sometimes ruthless. That Mom made terrible choices, but didn't deserve everything that happened afterward." She met his gaze steadily. "That we should love you without idealizing you." The assessment was fair, more fair than Victor might have expected given what Natalie had discovered. He recognized in her something valuable, the ability to see clearly without allowing emotion to distort judgment. His strategic mind with perhaps a measure of compassion he'd never cultivated. "And the journal?" he asked, nodding toward it. "I'll keep it," Natalie decided. "Insurance that you'll allow Mom to rebuild her life without interference. That you'll respect our relationships with her. That whatever scorched earth policy you've implemented stops now." Victor smiled slightly, recognizing the elegant simplicity of her approach. "Using leverage to ensure compliance. Perhaps you're more like me than you realize." "The difference," Natalie countered, "is that I'm using it to protect everyone, not just myself." As she left, taking the damning journal with her, Victor remained at his desk, contemplating this new reality. His daughter had effectively negotiated a détente that his ex-wife, her sister, and his business rivals had failed to achieve. The evening brought Connor home from baseball practice, sweaty and subdued. Victor found him in the kitchen, methodically assembling a protein shake. "Good practice?" Victor asked. Connor nodded without elaborating. The easy conversation they'd once shared had been another casualty of recent events. "Your sister visited earlier," Victor mentioned casually. Connor looked up. "Yeah? What did she want?" "To establish boundaries," Victor replied honestly, "and to ensure equilibrium moving forward." "Whatever that means," Connor muttered. Victor studied his son, 16 now, physically nearly a man, but emotionally still navigating the collapse of his family structure. "It means," Victor explained carefully, "that while the divorce is finalized, the aftermath doesn't need to be destructive. Your mother will have her gallery position. You and Natalie will maintain relationships with both of us. And past conflicts remain in the past." Connor's expression remained skeptical. "Until someone crosses you again." The observation was astute. Victor had never been one to forgive transgressions, a trait both children had now recognized. "My methods protect what I value," Victor stated. "They always have." "Including us?" Connor asked, surprising Victor with his directness. "Especially you," Victor confirmed. "Everything I've done has been to secure your future." Connor considered this. "Mom says the same thing about leaving, that she needed to find herself so she could be a better mother." "And do you believe her?" Victor asked neutrally. "I believe you both believe your own stories," Connor replied with unexpected wisdom. "I'm just not sure either of you considered what we needed." The assessment landed with precision. In all his meticulous planning, Victor had calculated his children's financial needs, educational requirements, and social development. He had not, perhaps, adequately valued their emotional well-being during his campaign against Melanie. "Fair criticism," Victor acknowledged, earning a surprised glance from his son. "Tactical adjustments may be warranted moving forward." Connor almost smiled at the corporate phrasing. "That's dad speak for I'll try to do better, right?" Accurate translation, Victor confirmed, allowing a rare moment of self-deprecation. That night, alone in his study, Victor reviewed the developments of the past 6 months with clinical detachment. Melanie had been contained without being destroyed. Pamela had accepted a plea deal that kept her out of prison, but thoroughly discredited. Alexander had pled guilty to reduced charges and would serve minimal time, before relocating overseas. Lawrence Kessler had been removed as CEO by his board, his reputation permanently damaged. All threats neutralized, all objectives achieved. Yet Victor's most valuable assets, his children's trust, had been significantly depleted. He opened his contingency journal, the replacement copy he'd created after Natalie took the original, and began a new entry: Restoration of Filial Relations. The title felt strange, reducing family bonds to strategic objectives, but it was the framework Victor understood best. As he wrote, his phone chimed with a text from Melanie. Sign the papers. It's done. Victor stared at the message, recognizing its finality. 15 years of marriage concluded with digital brevity. He considered possible responses: cold acknowledgement, subtle reminder of victory, professional cordiality. None seemed adequate. Finally, he typed, "The Burlington position suits you. The children will benefit from your professional stability." Her reply came quickly. "Was that your doing?" "Doesn't matter," he responded. After a long pause, "I suppose not. The outcome benefits us all." Victor set down his phone, contemplating the exchange. They had reached an equilibrium of sorts. Not peace or reconciliation, but a sustainable arrangement that protected what both valued most. The next morning brought news that Natalie had arranged for Connor to spend the weekend at Melanie's new apartment, the first unsupervised visit since the separation. Victor received this information without objection, recognizing it as implementation of the boundaries Natalie had established. When Connor left Friday afternoon, duffel bag over his shoulder, Victor walked him to the car. "Call if you need anything," he said simply. Connor nodded. "I will." Then, surprisingly, "You're not going to warn me about what I might say to Mom? Or give me a script?" "No," Victor replied. "I trust your judgment." Something shifted in Connor's expression, a slight easing of tension, a hint of the openness that had characterized their relationship before recent events. "That's new," he observed. "Tactical adjustment," Victor responded, echoing their earlier conversation. As the car pulled away, Victor returned to his study to finalize acquisition documents for Lawrence Kessler's former company, a hostile takeover facilitated by the former CEO's disgrace. The victory would add significantly to Victor's holdings while eliminating a longtime rival. He should have felt complete satisfaction. All opponents vanquished, all assets secured, even his children's relationships partially salvaged through strategic concessions. Instead, Victor found himself contemplating Natalie's words from the previous day. "You enjoyed watching Mom suffer." The accusation contained undeniable truth. Beyond strategic necessity, beyond proportional response, there had been something darker in his systematic dismantling of Melanie's life, a cold gratification in her downfall that revealed something fundamental about himself. Not regret. Victor Reeves did not indulge in regret, but perhaps recognition that the traits that built his empire might destroy his legacy if left unchecked. His phone rang. Natalie again. "Connor arrived safely," she reported. "Mom's place looks nice. Smaller, obviously, but she's made it work." "Good," Victor replied neutrally. "Is there anything else?" A pause. "Yes. Thank you for not interfering with this visit. It matters to Connor. And to me." The gratitude was unexpected, acknowledgement of his restraint rather than criticism of his previous control. "As you said," Victor responded, "equilibrium benefits everyone." After hanging up, he returned to his acquisition documents, signing the final pages that would complete his business victory over Kessler. The move would be announced Monday, adding another chapter to Victor Reeves' reputation as a ruthless corporate predator who never forgave